or is there just one kind that we've been seeing?
Stay.
Right now, we haven't collected any bamboo corals, but we have seen some unbranched lepidisis like colonies, which this might be one of those. It's tough to tell with bamboos, though, when they're very small, because you don't know if they just haven't branched yet, or are they truly unbranched. It's a bit of an open question in the field of bamboo coral taxonomy.
This is a great view with some of those polyps open. You can see the little red dot in the center of their mouths.
All right, good captures. Can we do the lasers?
And ship move underway.
I'm gonna like go to the base of it with the lasers?
No, just a general colonies, yeah, overall shot.
They're good?
All set.
All right.
Are you maintaining this downward angle, or are you going to be tilting up?
I think we're gonna make a change in bearing here. Right. Where are we going now?
135.
135. So it's sort of down slope. Why don't you just zoom in on that?
Zoom in on, start zooming, you pan it till.
But not that much. I mean, just junk.
Oh, the junk zone. Ooh. Big junk zone.
Is that a cucumber in the upper left?
Yeah. Do you want to look at it? We got to get going.
If we've got
here.
time.
We don't
No,
really.
not if we got to get going.
Yeah.
Nah. Since it's a little over 400 meters away, we can let the next watch leads decide when to do the next transect before we hopefully arrive at the final slope before the end of this dive.
Yeah, I just calculated it. We should get there. It's about an hour 20, hour 30 to get to that target that we dropped. So might be just in the nick of time.
Or we see a coral garden and must descend.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, so we'll be going down slope a little bit, correct? To get there slowly.
Yes, a little bit.
Are you the only one with us from the shore right now? How many scientists ashore are supposed to be with us?
Laura's here also.
Oh, you are there?
Yeah, I'm here. You know, I learned an interesting thing. I was, someone in my house is watching the live feed, and I've probably been kicked off the V-Link 100 times and then relogged in during this 4-hour shift. And I told him to turn off his feed, and now I can hear everything clearly, and I haven't been booted off. So I've learned about bandwidth.
At least for the last 9 minutes you haven't. You've been booted off 55 times this watch.
Is that many?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, it's frustrating. Wow. So now I know.
That's impressive, but also we didn't know. So, yikes.
Well, Yeah, yeah. I was
Al
wondering.
knew.
I'm like, I was thinking, I was thinking, what could possibly be happening?
I was
So this is so
suspicious.
much better.
Yeah, you had limited bandwidth.
Is that, yeah, is that Al that's
Yes, it is.
saying that?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was trying behind the scenes to figure it out. So now for next watch, I will make sure the other members of the household are in the room with me if they want to watch.
Thank you for the
Viewing
troubleshoot.
party. Yeah, it's hard to isolate reasons why potentially some people are getting kicked off or getting kind of garbled through V-Link. There are just so many different factors that, you know, it would take forever to go through the list. Do you have anyone else in your household? Are they on the same Wi-Fi? What's the weather like? You know, are you hardwired in versus on wireless? It would just take too long.
Yeah, we found the two biggest reasons are, well, guess who just got kicked off and brought back? 56 times this watch.
56 times.
Yes.
He's probably, yeah. I think I'm gonna like have everyone leave the house next time. I need all the bandwidth to myself.
And we found one of the biggest reasons is bandwidth from where you are, where the participant is. And we have one other reason, but we won't discuss it on SPL right now.
All right.
Yeah, I've got a complaint, but we're learning that V-Link actually isn't so bad. But there are other factors in play.
So do I have the record for the number of times kicked off?
You do, yes.
Excellent.
We'll send you a reward. You won a prize. It's a bag of chips. Bob will be sending them to you.
Fantastic. So yeah, I hope no one outdoes me.
It's been interesting. I've had some problems too. And I'm in normally, especially at night when it's happening, I'm in the office all by myself. So I'm curious to talk to you, Al, about what the other potential issues may be, because maybe I'm not a bandwidth issue person. Maybe I'm something else.
I don't think you are either. I think this other factor comes into play with you.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I feel better then. I was like, uh-oh.
It's
I mean,
difficult.
Yeah. And I do have about 1 million tabs open on my screen, so we can do watch properly. So maybe I'm competing with my own.
Oh, that explains something I'm reading. A very high CPU usage.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have 2 inner Space Center feeds and dive plan, table of contents, dive folder, email, transect guide, watch our collections list, and my calendar, and then the science chat.
Wow.
And my iMessage, and another window full of a number of other tabs.
And you're managing all that.
Well, this is just the one computer, yes, and then I have another computer that has, well, that computer, unfortunately, for this particular watch, my internet has not been working great. The NOAA network, unfortunately, seems to be down. And so I've just really had to use it all on this computer. Otherwise, normally, it's just V-Link and the inner Space Center feeds, which could be enough CPU. I'm not really familiar with computers, but maybe that's pulling enough to play the live streams.
No, like other participants are using live streams and not seeing such a high usage. Wow, 80% right now in the CPU, central processing unit. So I think it's all your tabs. But you're solid though. You've been solid for almost 4 hours, the whole watch. You haven't been kicked off once.
Yeah, and I'm on Wi-Fi for this particular computer too, because my hardwire is not reliable, ironically.
Wow, no kidding. You've got good.
Yeah,
I'm a mystery.
The hardwire.
And then there's Laura.
It's pretty cool that you can see. Like, You know what? Everybody is so much more clear now. I can understand the conversation. I just feel like I was kind of scrambling around in the dark, but for the last 5 minutes, it's been just fantastic. So,
Oh, I'm
please
sorry to hear that, Laura.
share what you've learned, though, with everyone else.
I absolutely will. Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting that you can see what's going on behind the scenes because I was wondering, I'm like, I wonder how many people know I've been dropping off. I feel, it's not intentional. So,
I've been watching the numbers grow, and I hadn't heard you for a while, and I thought, oh, you gave up.
well, I was chatting with Lizzie behind the scenes, just apologizing because I'd be in the middle of a sentence and it's like, oh, I'm gone. Oh, I'm back. So, I'm glad we got it figured out.
It's great. And it's happening. You're not alone. This is happening to a lot of folks. And what I also find annoying, which is almost, it's not worse, but it happens less often, is
So you volunteered?
I'm talking, but then I can't hear SPL or Nautilus. So I think I'm filling in dead space, and really I'm probably talking over important pilot chatter and people asking me questions, which then someone will type in the science chat, Lizzie, can you hear us?
And you lose,
and I feel silly.
you lose your ability to hear, but you haven't made any changes.
No, I've realized when there's been enough empty space to fill, I will look, that gives me the cue to pay attention to my VLink box, and I will see SPL and Nautilus or Nautilus lighting up as if it's registering that someone is talking. That's not me, but I'm not hearing it. So then I have to exit through the little man running through the door and then log back in, and everything's fine.
Okay, that's good to know. We're trying so hard to make this work. It seems to be a good platform. It's affordable, but it came into play last minute. So we're doing our best, and we're going to hopefully have an even better way of doing everything next year.
I think this is awesome. I mean, it is working. Yes, there will be technical glitches the first time you use anything, especially last minute. But I mean, I think given its frustrations, it's still doing the job.
And getting better. So
exactly.
It's watch change. So Sam's jumping up. She's off headsets. My relief is here. It's been a pleasure, and thank you so much for working with us.
Yeah, thank you, Al. It's been a good dive.
Yes, it has. All right, talk to you in the next one.
See you later.
Have a good lunch. Get those Cheetos.
So Lizzie, should I jump off first so that the next watch lead can come on and chat with you?
I think it's Meredith and Lisa. So whenever they signal to us that they're ready to hop on.
Great.
Until then, we can talk about this mysid floating across the screen or some of this mud we're seeing.
Oh, I have a quick question, Lizzie. So that the next dive that's going to be the shallow dive that we have some other folks who are joining in for us. So we won't be doing the 8 to 12 p.m.
Correct.
shift.
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like they're either going to do that dive and they're going to have some National Marine Fisheries people, or even if the weather is actually not allowing them to do that dive, they'll likely be in transit to Channel Islands because it's going to take between 8 to 12 hours to get to the sanctuary. And so I think no matter what, our shift, we're not going to be on tonight at that time.
Gotcha. So we'll just plan for tomorrow morning.
Yes. Okay. And it does sound like Lisa and Meredith are ready to hop on.
Okay, great. Well, thanks. It's been nice being on board with you all, and we'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah, that was awesome, Laura. Thank you so much. I look forward to the next time we work together.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh gosh. Okay, now I'm seeing. So I had to reload my science chat because I was not getting messages.
Hey, Lizzie. It's Lisa.
Hey. Hey, Meredith and Lisa.
Hey.
Woohoo.
Hey. How's it going?
I think it's going pretty good. I'll pull up the science plan and give you a lowdown. It's pretty simple. It doesn't sound like this shift has too much bottom time before they need to pull, but I'll let you, actually, I'll just pull it up on HiPAC if you scroll Toodaloo over to the HiPAC's channel. You'll see where we are approximately, and then you'll also see just slightly at the crosshairs, just southeast of where we are, 1 or 2 contours lower than where we are now, where there's this big bright blue dot and then some brighter orange around it, which indicates higher slope. That's pretty much where we're going. I figured
yeah, that's cool.
we were trying to.
Yeah, I heard you talk about that. We could probably end there, make it a nice farewell to the escarpment on a high note, hopefully.
So. Yeah, I hope so. We were supposed to run over a similar blue dot and orange slope space, but I think we either missed it or it wasn't what we thought it was going to be. Like maybe it was just a little bit of an inconsistency with the mapping data. And so we're headed to that one where there's a lot more orange in general. And I think Samantha said it'll probably take an hour 20 to get there. So I'm hoping maybe we can talk to the ROV pilots and the navigator if they're comfortable picking up speed to make sure we get there. I'm not as confident with what's happening at this depth versus, you know, what we've been doing more recently because that's been shallower. So
Gotcha.
Whatever they're comfortable with, we're hoping we get there to spend a few minutes there before we have to end the dive, but I can let you figure that out with your team.
Yeah,
and we
be
did
what it'll be.
Yeah. So we did finish a transect recently, and that I think she said was 400 meters away, and so hopefully at some point in that transit you can do another, but yeah, like I said, up to you guys, and I can let you figure all that out. But I think that's it. Did we do any collecting too? We did the Niskin. Yeah, Niskin 4. And that's it. Bye-bye.
Okay. That sounds
well, have a
good.
great dive. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Lizzie. Bye.
Bye.
So Meredith, while we, oh, you're not an SPL. Oh, Hello,
Okay.
those of you who are watching. We are in the middle of a watch change for the science crew and for the Nautilus crew. So we'll wait for everybody to be sitting in their chairs, wherever those chairs are, and then we'll do a round of introductions.
We are all switched over and ready.
Ready to go.
Cool. Is now a good time for y'all to introduce yourselves to folks who are listening in?
Sure.
Sure, I can start. This
Great.
is Stephen Matter in the video chair, and happy to be here.
Dan in the Argosy.
This is Jake in the Herc chair.
So Rennie in the navigator seat.
And Taylor Ann in the data logger seat.
And hi, good afternoon. This is Lisa. I am in the science seat from my home here in Aptos, California. And I work for the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries as the policy coordinator for the 5 West Coast National Marine Sanctuaries.
And this is Meredith Everett in the other science chair, broadcasting from my home just outside of Seattle, Washington. I'm a geneticist for the Northwest Fisheries Science Center, where I work with the Deep Sea Coral Research and Technology Program, doing genetics on deep sea corals and sponges.
And so for those of you who are chiming in or following us, not chiming in, but watching from your homes, we are on the Santa Lucia escarpment, which is 70 miles offshore from Morro Bay or the San Luis Obispo County. And we are on an escarpment, which means sort of a rise or a wall that flows from the Santa Lucia bank westward into what I think we would call the abyssal plains of the Pacific Ocean. And we are in the final 4 hours of a 24-hour dive. We think that we will be here on the bottom let me see, what depth are we at? At 2,800 meters. And then it will take us quite a while to reach the surface. So we'll have quite a bit of time in blue water as the 2 ROVs ascend to the surface, maybe 3 hours, but we'll hear from Nav how long that will take. So we're going to try and get the most out of our remaining minutes, an hour plus here on the bottom.
Yep. This has been a great dive so far. There has been a lot of this kind of mud bottom, but also these rocky outcrops and a lot of really interesting critters.
And we've been seeing quite a few of these. These are corallomorphs, correct, Meredith?
Yes, that's a corallomorph.
And I think they're so pretty. We've been seeing them in deep water, but also they're shallow species, and they have these sort of shining white tips. I was trying to read up on this. Is that where the nematocysts are?
The nematocysts will actually be throughout all of those tentacles, so all up and down.
So what makes it white? The white there at the end, is that just special coloration?
Just a special coloration.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what its evolutionary function is, but they should have nematocysts all up and down those tentacles.
Okay, great. Great for clarifying that for me and also for folks who are listening in. But I think they are just gorgeous. They're really pretty.
Yeah, I love those electric white dots.
It definitely shows up in as the Herc is panning through this wall, and they show up very easily. Oh, there's a smaller one above. And it's amazing how these, just a little bit of rock, this is actually quite a bit of rock, allows for the corals and sponges to settle and grow. Doesn't take much.
We've been seeing tiny pebbles that have these big black corals standing off of them, off of this wall, which is always amazing that they don't tip over. We're making our way in the last hour of this dive kind of across and downslope a little to one more spot on our map that you can see on channel 3, where there's the bright orange coloration on that map, and that's an area of really steep terrain that we're hoping will have more exposed rock, so we can see a last few corals before we have to head through the surface through blue water. Although one of the interesting creatures we've been seeing out on this dive is actually a couple of species of coral that will live in the soft sediment.
Just taking a look at this map, and it, yeah, so some of this slope here could be slope. Is likely to be slope, but I think some of it is roughness from the mapping data. So we'll kind of have to see what happens when we get there.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed we get some rocky outcrop over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 3 hours if we're going 15 meters a minute and 2.5 if we're going 18 meters a minute. So it's going to depend on. We should, but sometimes we only get 15.
If you feel, yeah, I mean, it's whatever you all feel most comfortable with.
I think if
we'll get to where
kelp.
we get.
Yeah.
You want the kelp, Taylor?
I always want the kelp, but I don't want to, take away from our last hour of diving.
You already got some kelp in there?
Yeah, I already have a piece.
Okay.
Take pictures and just notate that it was there. That's good enough.
I think if we pitch all the weights, we can make it in 2.5 or.
Yeah, 2.5.
18's. Seems like 20s.
You're gonna make me go in the hold for more weights.
We can do 20. Yep, that's what they're there for.
Oh,
ooh, look at the blackfish.
That's a Pacific flatnose?
Chase him.
Yep, Pacific flatnose.
Which is one of the few deep sea fishes that has a caudal peduncle. Most of them have sort of a tapering tail, like rat tails or
laser zoom.
Cusk eels.
It does still have the really big eyes that you see on all these deep sea fishes.
Laser zoom in, Steve. You're making work a little harder for it today.
It has those 3 spines, one on the dorsal fin and 2, it looks like, coming from the pelvic fins.
Yeah.
You can sort of see them. But it looks like a tripod.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a bit much. Okay.
Well, it looks a little muddy, like it's rubbed up against the wall there.
Yeah, yeah. And that mud, Meredith, you were sharing with us, is quite sticky. Yeah.
Yeah, it will stick very well to the vehicles, even if they're up in the water column. On our last shift, which was midnight to 4, I'd asked the pilots if even after going through the water column, they come up with it on deck, and they said, oh, yes. So there may be some following us around even right now.
So we have quite a few people, and this time it really is chiming in via our science chat. These are scientists ashore that are following along, just as the rest of the audience is, perhaps from their home, but they're following along and able to communicate with us via science chat, and they help us identify some of the species that we see. So that's really great. Thank you for letting us know what you see, and then hopefully Meredith and I will be able to share what you're sharing with us with the rest of those who are watching on Nautilus Live.
And one of the interesting creatures that one of our scientists ashore is pointing out right now, the pycnogonids, the sea spiders, we've seen quite a few of throughout this dive. This site seems to be very popular with them. If you keep an eye out for them, they look much like spiders, but with very, very thin, small bodies. They're almost all legs, and most of them have been kind of yellow in color.
When we see a pycnogonid next, we will try and zoom in on it so folks can get a look at them. And as Meredith said, they have very little body. Like all of their organs are tucked into the different legs that they have. It's pretty eerie looking. Very, very much a species to be looking at just a couple weeks before Halloween.
Yeah. And another good Halloween species we saw this morning, or very early, was the Munopsid isopod, which was a real wild-looking critter. If you want to see it, you can actually rewind
figure out it was
the
an
video.
isopod?
Yeah, we figured out it was an isopod. Lisa figured it out.
Nice.
I did some searching on all kinds of different terms, and finally, because amphipod was bringing me down the wrong rabbit hole.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Yes.
Yes. It's like, no, not that. Not that. And then I thought, maybe it's an isopod.
And then the weird stringy creatures we saw attached to the sponge at the very end of our last shift are actually a type of benthic ctenophore. Gary Williams sent that ID to me.
Oh, great. We should add it to our notes.
Yeah.
So it's a benthic ctenophore?
Yep. I put it in the science chat, and I will add it to the notes.
Okay, thank you.
Sponge.
See, and this is a great example of the scientists who are following along via science chat, how we can reach out to them, and they help us identify these sort of head scratchers for us. And earlier on the dive, they saw horsehead tunicates. And I hope we get to see one further along. They are also just, as Meredith said, wild.
Yeah, Erica Burton has emailed out to all the participants actually a paper about those. The genus on that is Culeolus. And that has some good photos and descriptions of them.
You guys
just going to the left of the lasers is a small soft coral called Bathyalcyon.
Yeah, no problem.
Never mind. What are we just?
Hey, yeah. We know the code for wire check. I need to go check the wire.
So when you all are checking the wire, are you looking at the amount of tension that's on the wire?
It's a code that I'm stepping out of the van for a minute. I think he's actually checking the wire, though. He's neurotic about it.
Yeah, I can see him in the back deck screen. I think we're backing down on the wire. So he wants to see the angle of it, if it's how close it's coming to the ship.
This might be a great time, since we're just going more over this muddy expanse. Maybe Jake and Dan can explain how the Hercules and Argus are connected to each other and what you're talking about with the wire tension.
Sure, yeah, so.
Thank you.
Speaking of wire, hold on, let me just switch back here. So we have 5,000 meters of what we call 6/8 cable on a winch in the hold of Nautilus, a traction winch. A kind of complicated machine. It has a big storage drum and then these 2 giant wheels that the cable wraps around, I don't know, 4 or 5 times to, that basically takes the load of the wire.
You can see this on satellite feed 3 right now. I'll follow along as Dan gives a tour with the cameras.
Yeah, so it's a giant machine that we, that's the lifeblood of being able to lower the vehicles to the seafloor and back. And so that wire comes up out of the hold through the deck, and it goes over and 2 sheaves on the deck, and then through the A-frame and down to Argus. And the tension on that wire right now is 10,000 pounds approximately. So with that length of wire out, it's kind of like a pendulum. And as you've heard Rennie talk about the layback, or the, I don't know what other terms he uses, but basically at the moment, Argus is several hundred meters behind Nautilus as we basically drag it through the water. So not only the water column being moved out of the way by Argus, it also has to be moved out of the way by 3 kilometers of cable. So it's displacing a lot of water. So basically, you know, if you put a weight on a wire and put it in the water and zing it around, it's, you know, not going to stay horizontal. So in this case, Nautilus is moving backwards through the water column, and the pendulum causes the wire to get closer to the aft of the boat.
Zoom, Steve.
And we have a camera that monitors that, but you can't exactly always get a good idea of what's happening. That camera's fixed. We have the deck camera also that gives us the angle of the wire, port and starboard, if you will, on Nautilus, but forward and backwards, it's kind of hard to see. So, and it's something we check too. I go and check it before shift, and we check on the winch. And even though we have the cameras, it's nice to actually go look at it once in a while.
Yeah, so it seems mostly fine statically, but in these swells, it does get pretty close. It's not touching or anything, but it gets pretty close on the pitching. I think we're still all right.
Can we'd like to interrupt just briefly. There's a zoom in on the pycnogonid spider, and you can see that it barely has a body, and it's mostly all legs.
The Halloween creature.
Yes.
A very Halloween creature.
Yeah. Like something from a Tim Burton cartoon. Okay, so you were explaining about the tension on the wire that is connected to the Argus, and then the Argus is connected to the Hercules, which is the one that is providing us with all this imagery.
Exactly,
Would you
yeah.
want to? Yeah, so please continue with your description of the setup.
Sure, so Argus is basically hanging at the end of the wire, and we can control the heading and depth on Argus. And then, so Argus is kind of a long, skinny ROV, and it's mostly a frame with obviously some electronics in it, and hydraulics and thrusters, and they're actually electric thrusters, but the oil compensates everything. anyways, coming out of one end of Argus, the opposite end of the camera that looks at Hercules all the time, is 35 meters of tether. And it's basically what we call an aramid cable. So in the center of it has 3 conductors for high voltage and fiber optics to give us all this beautiful imagery and let us control the vehicle. And then wrapped around that cable is Kevlar braided strand, so it's super strong, and it's terminated at each end in a kind of an aluminum cone arrangement that can take a tremendous load, more than the cable can take. So basically, if you braided a ponytail in your hair and someone is yanking on your ponytail, the force you would
Ouch.
feel on your head is what happens to Herc and Argus. And on that tether, we have 2 football floats, as we call them, and that kind of keeps Herc's tail up like a dog that's happy. And then on the Argus side, there's a weight, and that weight keeps the cable down on the Argus side. So usually Hercules is about 20 meters below Argus, if the Argus pilot's paying attention. and
Hint, hint, Jake. Hint, hint.
oh, that's actually me. Jake's piloting today.
Okay.
Dan's notoriously crazy with his Delta.
Yeah, horrible Argus pilot.
Very close last night.
Jake, is the camera racked all the way back right now? Or somewhat?
Yeah,
It's all the way out.
Oh, okay.
Should be out.
Sorry, just checking.
So we use that tether between Herc and Argus in launch and recovery. So when we launch Hercules over the side of the ship, we fly it around to the back of the ship, and we actually pull on Argus quite violently. And that's kind of like our third tagline. And we literally pull it off of the ship with a little help from the winch to lift it. And we do the opposite on recovery. So it takes some violent yanks, especially when we have weather. It will move Argus on the deck, which is, what, 4,500 pounds?
Something like that, yeah.
So it will, when Herc's in the water, it will actually slide Argus across the deck if it's not tied down. So the launch and recovery and weather could be quite violent, especially on that tether. It's amazing to me the forces that it takes. It doesn't like rip the ponytail off of your head. But one of the things we really have to watch with the tether is we have to monitor how many turns are in Argus and how many turns are in Herc, because if we get more than one, it does the kind of the 1980s phone cord thing that used to hang in your kitchen. Every time you lift off the hook, it's completely wrapped around itself.
Oh, yeah. So annoying.
Totally annoying. With an ROV, in the worst case scenario, can make the lights go out because it will damage the conductors or the fibers inside the tether. But more likely what happens is there's what we call a daisy chain and a lift line also between Herc and Argus. So there's a,
we were just looking at it on BudCam.
I forget what the rope is made out of, but it's the one that lifts Herc out of the water. But it's also attached to Argus, and it's kind of it's fastened along the tether to keep it married to the tether. So when we recover the vehicle, we recover Argus on the deck with the winch, and then it's basically slip knots all the way along the tether. And if you watch a recovery, you can see one person pulling like crazy. And there's probably, I don't know, 100 meters of rope between Herc and Argus that make up the daisy chain, and all that, it's 1/4 inch rope, all that gets pulled off and goes into a milk crate. And then that exposes the lift line, which we then untie from Argus and tie to the winch on the crane and winch Hercules in. So if there's a turn in that, the lift line gets wrapped around the tether, which can make it really challenging to get Hercules back on the deck. So.
Yeah. have a vague recollection from being on board in 2016 and helping re-splice the tether that it was Kevlar, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, it's about 15 hours to do the mechanical return on the tether between Herc and Argus.
Mhm.
And it's a complicated, tedious affair. So we have 2 of them in the boxes ready to go. That we basically rebuild one every winter or in the spring when we start up the season, just in case.
Yeah. In the main cam, we just saw a nice little envelop halfies, black coral. And did you say the tether separates the motion of the ship from Argus so that Herc is able to be all stable on the bottom?
Yeah, for the most part, there's you hear us refer to the delta once in a while. So we try to keep Hercules roughly 20 meters under Argus and 20 meters away from it. And that lets the tether kind of do this nice lazy S-bend. So it comes out of Hercules' tail and it floats up on the floats and then sinks down on the weight and goes back to Argus. So it's like a giant spring, but there's no tension on it. So it basically, it makes it like Hercules is not attached to anything. The only thing it's pulling around is, you know, a little bit of weight from maybe half of that tether. But what happens when we get too far away or too high, it starts pulling on Hercules' tail, which makes it really challenging to turn the vehicle at all. So like when we launch and recover and go through the water column, both ROVs are tail to tail, and that tether is stretched out tight the whole way. And if, for example, when we stop to look at something or do a sample and Argus keeps moving, it starts pulling Hercules around. So you literally can't turn the vehicle. All you can do is fly backwards towards Argus.
Yeah. So when the biologists have you looking at something and we start hearing you say, "Oh, I'm running out of leash," it means that the ship is underway and Argus is moving and you're about to get pulled away from whatever we're looking at anyway.
Yeah. So usually before we get pulled away, it starts pulling our heading around, and if we're on a tight leash, as we call it, we have to use a lot of power with the thrusters to turn Hercules to a particular heading. And if we're up against a cliff or on a muddy seabed, using all that power with the thrusters usually obliterates the visibility. So usually before we get pulled, you see a giant dust cloud. Then we can't see where we are.
Like last night.
Like last night. That's what happened.
Then you end up scooping up all of the mud, and the whole story comes full circle back to the mud on the deck.
Yeah, once the visibility is gone, it's hard to keep your orientation. You're basically flying on instruments at that point. So you have a compass and an altimeter, maybe, and depth, and then you know the difference between the depth between Herc and Argus. So. And if there's a lot of mud on the vehicle, like there was last night, when you're being pulled backwards, it's like a pickup truck driving down a dirt road at 60 miles an hour. There's a giant dust cloud coming off forever.
Can I quickly find out how far we've come since the last transect? Since on the high pack, it looks like we're about halfway between the end of the last transect and the
350 meters.
Okay. They might as well give Tom Lighting something to do in a little while. And how about can we start another transect while we're moving along here?
Sure thing. Good with that?
Just run it to.
Yeah, good.
You happy with the camera angle, scientist?
Yeah, that looks just fine.
Okay. Let's see if I want to do a reset here. Really hard to tell what. start.
Although, how much space do we have till we get to that high relief area before we really get started?
About 250 meters.
Okay, perfect.
That's probably good enough. Okay, all right, Taylor Ann, we'll just start here.
Alrighty, that's transect number 10.
Number 10. Sure.
And of course, as soon as we start the transect, we go by a little coral.
I think your speed might be a little low.
Oh, yeah.
These quantitative transects are a method we use to compare these deep sea habitats up and down the coast. We're having the pilots fly at a relatively constant speed and altitude, and then a group at NOAA's Southwest Fisheries Science Center can count all of the invertebrates and fish that are seen on the transect. So like these, I think that's a sea cucumber there, will be one of the things that gets counted. Nice scarlet king crab there. We didn't see any of those when we started the dive, about 1,000 meters deeper, and it's been in the last couple of hours that I've started seeing them on the video feed. We're definitely getting into a little bit of a transition as we move up slope. So you all on the pilot teams not only fly the vehicles, you guys do all of the maintenance and repairs while you're out at sea as well. Take care of fixing anything that goes wrong and keeping the vehicles up and running and getting them reset before and after every dive.
Yeah, that we do. That's the hard part of this job. Sitting in here is the easy part.
And Herc still has its own garage on the ship, along with the whole wall of tools and as many spare parts as you can fit aboard.
Yes, it does. Yeah, we have, I don't know, 100 some totes. It's, a lot of spare parts to keep track of. I have a fancy new inventory system that some of the guys have been working on now for months. So we can actually find stuff now. But part of the challenge is this, like, the first question is, do we have it? Is it aboard the ship? Yes or no? If we're looking for a spare part, for example, a spare light, if one of the lights goes out. And so if you can answer the first question, yeah, we have one. And the next question is, where is it? And the answer is, it's in a tote somewhere. So
some tote, and there's hundreds of totes.
Hundreds of totes, and not only are there a lot of totes, there's like 4 different storage locations. So we have the shop, obviously, and the hangar, and then we have the hold down in the ship, and then there's several cubbies around the ship where you'll find parts stashed. So being able to keep track of all that inventory is a huge task. And for example, if I take that light and put it on Hercules and then take the old one and put a tag on it that says NFG, which is a famous one, but stands for something no good, and I don't flag that somehow, then it'll get forgotten about, and then the next time a light goes out, someone will spend a half an hour looking for it and then open the box just to find this half-broken part that is not serviceable. So the light then needs to be either repaired on site or sent back to the manufacturer or service house for a rebuild. And then keeping track of all that, what goes off the boat and what comes on the boat, is also pretty intensive task, as you have stuff being shipped all over the, as you guys know, shipping your gear to and from the boat.
Yep.
That moves around all the time. Is can be challenging. So we usually have a pile of parts waiting for us for each port call. There's a lot of consumables that we go through all the time. Tie wraps probably being the tie wraps and tape. So we have like 2 totes full of those. That, and there's various special lubricants and oil that we use on the vehicle for all the fasteners and the electrical connections. And we're constantly burning through that stuff. I think last port call we had 4 cases of paper towels arrive.
And was it enough?
What's that?
And was 4 cases enough, or is yet to be determined?
We have to.
TBD.
What's that?
TBD.
What's that?
Yeah.
To be determined.
Oh, we actually have 2 kind of paper towels. We have the cool, really good bounties that we try and reserve for working on parts. And well, we actually have 3. We have the really expensive blue shop towels, and we have the bounties, which are kind of middle of the road, and then we have the really cheap paper ones like you find in a service station restroom.
Yeah. Yeah, and working on anything on the vehicles isn't easy because working at these depths, nothing can have air in it. So all of any of the pressurized parts are in oil, aren't they?
Yeah, well, we have 2. So obviously the electronic bottles and the cameras and lights are 1 atmosphere housings, and with really delicate O-rings to seal. And then we have the oil filled J-boxes and cables and components like Jake's sticky fingers actuator. Sorry, squishy fingers actuator.
Squishy, yes.
So yeah, we have to keep the oil in and the seawater out. There's part of our maintenance, like when we come on deck today, there's an array of a dozen quick disconnects, and we'll take an oil sample out of every one and make sure there's been no seawater ingress, and we'll drain some oil out of the manipulator to also make sure no seawater's found its way in there. We'll run around with wrenches and screwdrivers and other tools to make sure all the bolts aren't falling out. We're constantly finding loose fasteners, especially on the dynamic bits